what's going on. So in the previous video, we made this script, which we set a gap that we want, and then provided that you're selecting more than two or more items, then it will space out all the items with that gap in between them. So we're in a good place. It works, which is really cool. So for instance, if I do this, and let's do 0.1, it spaces them all out with a 0.1 in between. There you go, roughly 0.1. Cool. But what we really want is we want to prompt the user so that each time you do this script, and presumably it would be attached to a shortcut key, each time you do this, the user can type in, what they want the gap to be. All right, so we've got our Reaper API, and what is it? It's like get user or something. Inputs. Yeah, get user inputs. That's the one. So here we go. Get user inputs. So we haven't seen this before actually, but this returns two values. Most of the or all of the functions that we've seen so far only return one value. But when a function returns two values or more values, they're separated by a comma. Cool. So there's quite a bit going on here. So let's just dump it in, and then we'll talk about it. So we can leave this here because that can be our default. So what we're going to do is let's move this down. So we're going to have a default value of 1. Set the value to 1 in case the user doesn't make a choice, because that could happen. Maybe for a quick workflow you could have it so that like 1 is the default, but like if you want to spend a little bit more time in that iteration, you can actually tell it to do something else, but otherwise it'll be 1. That might be a good user-friendly way of working. So we've got a number of 1, and then when we get the input, maybe it can be something else. Let's do it that way. Cool. So we've got this get user function, and what that'll do is a little text box will come up on screen, and it'll say something, and there'll be a box that the user can type into. So the title. So we need to fill some of these things out. So the title will be user. No, that's too formal. What would we call it? Maybe it can be conversational. What do you want the gap to be, friend? Number of inputs. I believe that's just 1. We only want 1 input. Oops. String captions. String captions. I'm not sure. Let's just do empty strings because I'm not 100% sure what that's asking for. Hopefully it'll become clear. Cool. So it returns two things. So the Boolean, I believe that this is just whether it like worked or not, or whether they return something or not. Because if they press escape after the box comes up, then nothing's returned, so this will probably be false. I think that's how it works. But if they do type in something and then it returns, and then it returns true. So retval is just like, did something happen or not? And then this is the actual thing that the person typed. So we'll call that user input. So hopefully this is clear what's happening. This function, when the script gets to this, it's going to pause at that point. A box is going to come up. And then when the user types something, or either types something or doesn't, and presses either enter or escape or cancel or something, you'll get a return boolean, and then this will either be an empty string or it'll be a string with whatever the user typed in. Cool. So the next thing, actually, yeah, let's just run this. Let's just run this so we can see what's happening. Cool. So that's our box that's come up. What do you want the gap to be? So there's some empty space here. Presumably that's what one of these strings does. Captions. I believe that caption. So the third argument, 1, 2, 3. This one here. Type a number. Yeah, type a number. There you go. All right, now, one very important thing is there's nothing to stop me typing letters. Okay, so what we want to do is we need some way of checking to see if what the user typed was a number or not. Now this won't be a Reaper inbuilt function. This will actually be a Lua function. And the function is toNumber. So what do we got? toNumber. Yeah, so this is an example of what it does. See here in this example, this is a string that is the same characters as the number 4,839, but it's a string, and you know that because it's got the quotes around it. Now, presumably in this example, this person who wrote this article is using the toNumber function. So what that does is it takes a string and it converts it to a number. Now, it's only going to do that if it is a, if the string only contains numerical characters. For instance, this one here, if you tried to call toNumber on myString1, then that's not gonna work. You can see here in this tutorial, returns nil because this is inconvertible, because it has characters in it that aren't numerical. So that's what we're going to use. So let's do local. How do we do this? Yeah, sure, that's fine. Local user input number equals toNumber user input, right? Here, user number will either be a number or nil. Okay? It'll be nil if this is either empty or if they typed in non-numerical characters. Even if they did sort of like this or something, it would be nil. Okay. So we're running the toNumber function on user input and then assigning it to user input number. So this could either be a number or nil. Now, what we can do is if user input number, then do something. And what we want to do is we want to overwrite user specified gap with user input number. Now I'll explain what's happening here. When we do if variable name then, basically it's checking if it exists, basically. Well, that's not quite right, actually. Like if user input number is nil, then this statement would be false, and we wouldn't enter this line of code. So if this doesn't exist, or if it equals nil, it's going to skip over this chunk and continue on. That's basically what's happening there. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's run it to find out. I'm going to run it. It's coming up with this. I'm going to type in letters. And when I click OK, it's going to continue on. It's going to try and convert it to a number. It's not going to work. So this will be nil. Whoops. This will be nil. So it's not going to override this with anything. So this is going to still be 1. So then when it gets down to here, this is still going to be 1. There you go. But now let's do it again. And this time I'm going to do 0.5. Now this will successfully convert to a number. So then this exists. So we enter here and it overrides this with our new number, which is 0.5. So that's pretty cool. So you can keep doing this with different numbers. Whoopsies. Different numbers, and it works every time. There you go. So that's a really cool way to incorporate user input as a as an option. So yeah, like from a workflow point of view, how I would sort of use this is I'd be here. If a gap of 1 was fine for me, I would just do the shortcut and then press escape, and then, you know, it's just 2 keystrokes and you've already spaced everything out. But then if I wanted to be really specific with it, you know, you can actually be specific with it. So there we go. So last thing to do is we want to assign a shortcut for it. So I'm going to do Alt-H because, well, this script pretty much mimics a Pro Tools function that I really like. And that's the shortcut on Pro Tools. So that's what I'm going to go with. So Alt-H, 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 there we go. Very, very cool. All right. Hopefully you found that useful.